What is going on, all you wonderful A-plusers out there? It is I, Stuart, here once again to give you guys another Legends of Tomorrow review. This time, of course, I'm going to be talking about episode number 3 of this season. I'm going to just kind of give you a little disclaimer right here. Oops, I didn't mean to bump that. I'm going to be very mean in this review. And it's not because I want to be mean. It's just because it's a really bad episode. So a lot of times when I watch something I don't like, I tend to nitpick at a lot of things that normally wouldn't bother me if it was in a product that I actually enjoyed. It's that joke about how like in a lot of horror movies you get characters making like really dumb decisions, and the joke is you only really care about these dumb decisions if you don't like the movie. But honestly, when you're watching a really good horror movie and you're watching like characters make these dumb decisions, you tend to not care because you're enjoying the overall film itself. And you don't tend to point out when the characters are really dumb. But if you're watching a really bad horror movie and you get these characters making those same decisions, then you're more likely to point it out, how dumb these characters are being. It's a weird analogy to use, but it's the best way to describe how I feel with, certain episodes of TV shows that I like. I'll point out a lot more inconsistencies and just plot holes if it's an episode I don't like. But a lot of times if it's an episode I do like, if the overall bigger picture is better, I tend to ignore and just not care about the little details that go into it. So unfortunately, because this was a really bad episode, a lot of the small things that I normally don't nitpick too much about with the rest of the show, I'm going to be nitpicking here. And I'm sorry if that makes me an asshole, but it's because I want the show to be better, and I've seen what the show can be, and so I really want to see it improve in the future. So I want to point out what I don't like about these, certain aspects of the show, hoping that later in the future we can get a more polished product. But with all that being said, guys, let's break this episode down and get into it. And let's start by introducing our main villain for the episode, whose name I did not even bother to remember because I just remember it was something, alien-like, and, honestly, if the writers aren't going to put effort into writing a funny joke, then I'm not going to put effort into remembering a main villain's name at all. So anyways, our villain's premise is actually kind of a creative one, or at least it could have been had they really had a lot more fun with this, but instead they try to do this weird balance in this episode of trying to be a character-driven episode where a lot of characters have different things going on and each of them are developing in one way or another. But they also try to have this really bizarre concept with the episode on top of that. So, and I'm not saying you can't do that. Like, obviously there are talented writers out there that know how to balance, like, comedy with also real good character drama. But unfortunately, it doesn't pan out well in this episode at all. And in fact, Legends of Tomorrow itself has had episodes where things like that have happened. Like, my favorite episode of the show is the one where they're trapped in TV, and that episode had some of the best laughs along with some of the best character growth. Blah, blah, blah. Anyways, so it had some great moments overall. It was a perfect episode in my opinion. And here's an episode that tries to do something very similar, but fails in every single way. So let's talk about what the episode's about. So we get this alien who comes from his home world, and he's an alien. He's from a species of conquerors, kind of like, I guess you could say they're kind of similar to the Saiyans, although if you watch all the way to the very end of the episode, I guess they technically have more in common with the Tuffles from Dragon Ball Z, but you know what, I'm just gonna compare them to the Saiyans for now. So he's part of a conquering planet, and he comes to Earth trying to slay the king because he believes that Earth has a king that he needs to slay. And really what it is because he was captured by the same alien that captured Sarah. I believe her name was Kayla, and because he was captured by her, that set him completely off course. So I'm sure the planet he was originally meant to conquer actually did have a king, but because he was sent to Earth instead, Earth doesn't actually have a king. So he sees an ad in a magazine for Zari's ex-boyfriend, who's hosting this reality show called The Throne, and he thinks this is a challenge to win the actual throne to become king of Earth. So he enters this competition. How he enters this competition, I have absolutely no idea, because, you know, when you think about it, if you enter a reality show contest in the real world, there is a lot of paperwork, a lot of process that, you know, really goes into it. You don't just say, I want to be in a reality show and it happens. There is a lot of things that go into it, and year after year, security for that kind of thing only gets worse and worse. It becomes more and more challenging. So, you know, how he in the year 2045 is able to get a spot on a reality show, a reality game show that apparently is the #1 most viewed show in the world at that particular time period, I have no idea. I guess, but you know what? Again, I wouldn't be nitpicking this part if the episode itself was entertaining, but it wasn't, so I'm gonna nitpick it. We then cut to Zari, who finds out that her ex-boyfriend has been slain by this alien, so that's when the Legends discover what their new mission is. And we get to the one major thing that really dragged this episode down. I mean, there were quite a few things that dragged it down, but one of the major ones was Rory for me. Just the writing for his character this episode was awful. Like, and you know, maybe if this was the second episode of the season, because in the first episode we kind of got hints of his depression in this like, you know, that it would lead to something like this in this episode, but then like episode 2 kind of comes and it's implied that he's like gotten over it and he has his head back in the game, but here he's kind of back to how he was in the beginning of episode 1 of the season. And this is only really the beginning of what I don't like about him in this episode. I'll get a lot more into him later on, but essentially he spends the entire episode not showering, or I guess we'll have to assume he's not showering because the Legends constantly comment about how he smells absolutely disgusting, but honestly he just looks like himself, so that's literally the only thing that implies that he hasn't been showering. But you know, he's constantly drinking also, which is nothing super new, but they're saying that he's drinking more than usual, so again, we'll just have to take the Legends' word for it, I guess. And yeah, so he's pretty much just kind of being useless for a majority of the episode, and when he's not useless, he's actually getting in the way, but I'll get into that later on. But then we cut to the reality show, and we cut to the guy hosting it, of course, the marshmallow head that we see Zari has been dating. One thing I thought was kind of clever about this episode that I am going to give him credit for is, obviously, due to COVID restrictions, they can't exactly have an audience or anything like that. So what they do here is they have like little tiny hologram projections of different people watching the show on their phones or on their TVs with a webcam attached to it, which actually isn't too far-fetched of an idea of what watching reality shows might look like in the future. I could totally see this becoming a thing. Now, obviously, I feel like there's way too few projections, but that all just comes down to special effects budgets. You know, I know from experience in Adobe Premiere Pro, the more layers you try to put onto something, the more it just becomes a lot harder to edit, because then everything just becomes so laggy. So you know what, I'm okay with how few screens there are, but you know, I just because I think this is a really cool premise in general. Like, I do like this idea of people watching it from their home but still being part of the audience. And you could also say that it's maybe only a select people in universe. Like, maybe if you're a selected person, your face gets shown on TV, like you get to show the world that you're watching this on your webcam. I'm actually a little more curious about how the rules of this work, because, you know, I'm assuming this being a family-friendly network, they have to be very strict on what you wear in front of your webcam, and my question is, how do they monitor that? Do they have someone constantly looking through the screens of people also watching it? You know, I do have questions about it, but I'm also not trying to say it doesn't make sense. It makes total sense to me, and I thought this was a very, again, I'm giving them credit because this was a really clever way to get around COVID restrictions. So, you know, I thought that was pretty creative overall. We then have the alien trying to assassinate the Marshmallow Man, as I'm just going to be calling him because I don't even care to remember his name either. And he's luckily stopped by Bayrod and Nate. And again, this is where I get like another complaint about this episode, is that this fight scene was so lame. We, for the first time in a long time, get to see Nate, you know, actually steel up. And for a while, I always kind of blamed the budget for why we don't see him do that as much. You know, I always assumed maybe budgetary reasons, because having him steel up, you know, with all that CG is expensive. But I've also been seeing a lot of expensive CG used this season, in the previous episode and the episode before that. So I really don't think expensive CG is an excuse anymore. And if it is an excuse, there are plenty of ways they could have written his powers out of the show. My problem is that we're constantly seeing him, like, in situations where, getting his powers, up and running, like stealing up. I don't know what term you would really use, but for him to turn into steel, like, there are so many moments where that would come in handy, and he very rarely uses it. And when he does, it's like moments like this, it's just used for like one brief fight scene that's not even well choreographed at all. And it's weird too, because you look at all the room that the actors had to work with. They really could have had a lot more fun with this fight scene, but it's very brief. And then on top of that, the episode has the balls to say this was such an amazing fight that the king, the guy, or the Marshmallow Man, actually thought it was like a really good dance choreography, so he automatically puts him into the champions bracket, which I guess is something that you can do as a host. I don't know. It seems extremely unfair to me, but whatever. But it's followed by Ava tricking him into following them into their ship, where they try to take him prisoner. And this is where we really get to see how OP this guy actually is. We see that he legit can't be taken prisoner. So the only way to really stop him is to play him at his own game. And we find out that, even though he is an unstoppable force, he does have somewhat of an honor code. So when they tell him that the only way he can win the throne is to actually win in a singing contest, he goes along with it. And again, this is the part where they could have had a lot more fun with it, but it's such a small part of the episode compared to everything else that really drags the episode down, which is too bad, because this was genuinely funny, seeing how unstoppable he was and yet how willing he is to comply with the rules. Like, I feel like there were just so many gags they could have done with this, and it's just such a small portion of the episode. We then also have the other thing that drags this episode down. Now, this is where I'm going to get mean, and I do apologize, for those who might be triggered for this and those that probably worked really hard on the episode. I do apologize, because I'm going to get mean here. The writing for the songs in this episode, the songs were just really bad in this episode, with the exception of the very last song that we get, which, isn't even a song that was written for the show. It was actually a song that existed before. So, in other words, this episode has no good original songs. Now, I'm definitely not trying to throw shade to Zari's actress, because she did incredible. Like, I actually really did like her voice in the episode. I thought she did really great. But the problem is the songs that they were working with were just awful. And it's really hard to enjoy someone's great vocals when the songs that they're singing are really bad. And that's just the unfortunate thing about it. We then have... This was something I wanted to talk about because it was just so out of place, but I got to get into Zari and Constantine's relationship and just their characters in this episode in general. So they had a thing going on at the very beginning where both of them wanted the other person to say I love you, but neither one of them could say it themselves. Kind of, something you really do expect with their characters, especially with what we saw in the previous couple of episodes. And we are seeing, this was something that I was actually looking forward to them exploring in this episode. But in order for it to work, they had to write John Constantine as a total asshole the entire episode. So it ended up just not working out the way it could have. And you also had this weird kind of minor plot going on with Zari and her mom. And I say, it's just so bizarre the way this was thrown into the episode, because you have one moment when they arrive in her present, 2045, and we see that her mom is calling her and Zari, ignores it. And then we have this moment where she's calling her and she ignores it, followed by her mom popping right into the room and asking why she's been dodging her calls. And they act like this was just like a huge part of the episode, but it was literally barely touched upon earlier. So it's, it's really weird the way they hammer this Zari and her mom's relationship into this when this has not been something that was built up at all. And, you know, just you had that one scene in the beginning. That's it. That's not really build up. You know, I can't call that build up when you just have Behrad talking to her and him being like, hey, Zari, you want to talk to mom? And Zari being like, nah, I'm good. You know, I can't say that's build up for this. You know, there was zero build up at all. So, you know, it wasn't a great scene, but it was basically Zari and her mom trying to come up with an understanding. Zari's mom like being worried that she's dating Constantine, but then Zari assuring her that it's just a fling. And I thought for a moment in my head, oh, what if Constantine was listening in on this whole conversation? But I'm like, no, that's so dumb. Even by legend standard, they wouldn't, you know, go with a really obvious cliche like that, and they went with the extremely obvious cliche just like that. Yeah, Constantine, despite the fact that he was being dragged off into another room, apparently had time to slip by and listen in on this whole conversation to the part where Zari assures her mom that her relationship with Constantine is only a fling and nothing else. And it's followed by him just kind of acting like a child the entire episode. We then get the big thing that may not the biggest. Don't worry, there is still a worse scene than this, but we get one of the worst scenes with Mick Rory, who is wondering why they're just letting the alien go along with the games. And, you know, obviously he wasn't there for the previous encounter with the alien, so he doesn't know how OP it is. But he's under the impression that, oh, what if we just blow it up now while he's in this stadium filled with, you know, other people, other innocent bystanders. This is like incredibly like to a whole bizarre level, like out of character for Mick. Like, I almost don't know what to say. So he tries targeting the alien, but the alien sees immediately that he's being targeted. So he sends his whole armada and aims his weapons at the Earth. And Mick's just kind of like, whatever, Earth is doomed anyways. And I gotta say, Mick is almost like a parody within a parody. What I mean is Mick in the first two seasons had a good character arc, I believe, when he went from bad to good. I think it was an arc that carried out for 2 seasons. Season 3, they wanted to keep that personality, but they wanted to make him a good guy, so the easiest way to do it was to make him kind of a self-parody. He's essentially a parody of himself in seasons 3, 4, and 5. In this episode, he felt like a parody of his usual parody self. Like, this scene is followed up with the worst pep talk kind of speech. So like every Flash episode has those moments where I keep bumping this thing out of frustration. Every Legends episode, every Arrow episode, every, you know, Flash episode has those moments where people are talking in the hallways, giving that prep talk, trying to, you know, cheer people up and tell them it's not, you know, never give up hope, that kind of thing, which I'm used to. Here it's followed with like him like saying, if you had been kidnapped, Sarah would have rescued you by now. And Ava trying to say, yes, I know, I'm not Sarah. I'm doing the best that I can though. And that's followed by Mick complaining that his daughter doesn't call him. I don't know what to say to that. Like, it's so irrelevant to the conversation that was happening before. Like, this episode broke me almost. Oh my god. Like, even like just thinking about this episode, it's bad. Wow. Yeah. So anyways, he has this weird baby face, as you could see. I had to pause it at this moment because I was laughing, and not for the right reasons at all. Yeah. So the episode, we're almost to our climax, guys, and don't worry, after I talk about the plot of this episode, I can get to the good thing about this episode, which was the Sarah storyline. But anyways, Zari and John Constantine win the throne by singing one of John's favorite songs, and then he and Zari are instantly, you know, back together, and they're okay with calling each other boyfriend and girlfriend and saying I love you. So hooray, you know, it's so cool that this relationship that I was actually kind of rooting for at the beginning of the season really wrapped itself in a nice bow by having both characters act, well, out of character, you know? Alright, so at the very end, the alien loses and he accepts himself as a servant, and we see that he's actually a tiny man inside of a suit, kind of similar to the first Men in Black movie. I actually thought this was kind of a really cool nod. Speaking of nods, one other nod I didn't mention in the previous episode, but I thought was kind of cool, is like just the way the alien was designed. I thought very much also kind of reminded me of the older Men in Black movies. Like I mentioned that the CG looked a little like not great, but not terrible. I think that was, to me, it kind of felt like that was almost done on purpose to really feel in line with the Men in Black movies, because that seems to be, Doctor Who and Men in Black seem to be like the two sci-fi franchises that Legends are constantly referencing. And, I like that because, I love Men in Black, and I really enjoy Doctor Who. I haven't seen any of the newer episodes, but, I do like that these are the shows that are the things that Legends have been referencing recently. So, anyways, he turns out to be an intelligent life form within the giant suit, and he pops out of the giant suit, kind of representing peace. And so we think that, now is the perfect time for them to finally get information on which alien abducted him and how to find Sarah. But nope, it is followed by Mick stepping on it, and whether or not it's on purpose or accident is never explained. And the worst part, the most insulting part about this whole scene, is that it's followed by him getting a pat on the back. He has this drawing of an alien, and he draws it the way he thought the other alien of this episode described it, and he's convinced that this is what the alien that kidnapped Sarah looked like based on the description that he has chickens on his face. And yet that's a weirdly accurate picture of what the alien looks like when your only description of it is that she has chicken wings on her face. Yet he draws almost perfect replica of it. I mean, obviously not perfect as in it looks good, but perfect as in it technically is an exact cartoon drawing of what the alien species looks like. I don't know what to, like, I think this drawing is a perfect representation on the amount of effort the writers put into this episode. And the worst part is he killed the biggest lead that could have led the team to Sarah. He killed that biggest lead, and he gets a pat on the back for it because he makes a cute drawing. And he suggests this is the alien that took Sarah. Congratulations, Rory. You have now just suddenly become the worst character on the show in one episode. Obviously, I'm sure that's not going to last. I'm sure I'm going to love him again in the next episode, depending on, how he's written. But, wow. Wow. Okay, let's talk about the stuff in this episode that I actually did like, which was basically the story with Sarah Lance. She essentially has to convince... Why am I Gary. Wow, I don't know why I blanked on his name. I guess I'm so broken from this episode, I've now forgotten Gary's name, even though it's like one of the easiest names to remember. Anyways, she basically, they're surrounded, and she convinces Gary to go alien mode, so that way he could easily take down the people that are hunting the two of them down. And this was something that I thought was kind of cool, because what I had thought was going on before is I thought like maybe the planet that he came from was like a thing where the female species had like a lot more power than the male species, like because we see that his ex-fiance is able to just easily eat like people like nothing, and because Gary's like such a wimp and we've never seen him show any kind of strength like that in the series, I was kind of left to the assumption that he didn't have that ability or anything like that, but this episode shows that he actually does, but he really doesn't want to eat people. And here's where I thought, if I'm going to nitpick about this, I think they had a funny idea for a gag that they could have gone with, but they didn't. The idea of maybe the fact, the reason he doesn't eat people is because once he starts, it's really hard for him to stop. But they go with a kind of similar gag to that, which I'll get into in a minute. So he does start like eating these things one by one, and I'm sorry for the quality of these images. It doesn't look quite as clear when you're showing it on like a little tiny box like this, but take my word for it, he's eating someone in this photo. I don't know if you can see. But then meanwhile, we see that Sarah Lance sees Ava, right? And we're left to believe that this must be a hallucination, and so she starts following this hallucination of Ava until we get a shot where Gary removes one one of the helmets of the people that are hunting him down, and we find out that they are actually Ava clones that have been hunting them down, because if you remember back in season 3, it's the team discovers that Ava has actually been a clone this whole time. So the episode ends with Sarah following one of the Ava clones into this cave where she comes across this stranger who apparently recognizes Sarah Lance. And the area that he's in, I don't know what it is about it, but something looks very familiar to the Wave Rider. So, you know, it could be that this guy is actually a potential, like, either future Legends member that crash landed on this planet and was waiting for Sarah, like, you know, maybe crashed there in the past or something. I'm not sure how it would all make sense coming together, but I'm sure there's some way the writers could figure it out. But you know what? The one thing I worry about with this is that so far I'm really intrigued in the mystery of this. Why are there Ava clones out on a distant planet? Who is this guy and how does he know Sarah Lance? Why was Gary's ex-fiance so you know, fixated on capturing Earth's mightiest warrior? What is this planet that they're on? You know, I have all these good questions, and what worries me is with the writing quality that we got in this episode, I'm worried that I'm going to be very disappointed when we get all these answers, but I'm also hoping that I'm wrong, because so far the Sarah Lance storyline is really the only thing I'm caring about now. You know, when it comes to everything going on, like, I felt like this season has a great premise, but it relies so much on characters just being out of character for it to make any sense. And, you know, it's hard to enjoy a show like that when that's the type of writing that you're relying on. So I hope it improves in the future. I hope this isn't the quality that we can expect for future episodes this season. But if this is a representation of what we can expect going forward, I don't know if I'm going to be reviewing the show for that much longer. Like, obviously, I don't want to give up on it yet. I want to at least give it till like episode 5 or 6. Because again, this was a huge letdown episode, and I think the only reason I'm extra upset about it is because the previous episode wasn't that good either. So, you know, I'm hoping it improves. I'm hoping this isn't all going to go downhill. I'm hoping this isn't another downhill for Legends of Tomorrow, because I'm really rooting for the show, and I see that the show has a lot of potential, and I really hope the writers understand that potential that they have. But yeah, guys, this might have been one of my longest review episodes just because of how much I didn't like that, so I apologize for dragging this review on for so long. But you know what, guys? At the end of the day, these are just my A+ opinions. We here at A+ Opinions always want to know what you guys think, so definitely let me know in the comments below if you guys enjoyed this episode or not. I definitely would love to hear your thoughts on it for sure, especially now more than ever since I really didn't like the show, and I'd be really curious if people did like the episode, and I'd really love to know why. You know, and I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean, I genuinely do want to know, you know, what other people enjoyed about this episode if they did. But yeah, you know, definitely let me know in the comments below. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel. But guys, of course, above all, as we always say, keep it A+.